Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metza. We hope everybody's doing well out there. We've got a great show tonight. A complete character who I had the pleasure of meeting in December at his apartment in Greenwich Village. John Kruth is a musician, a writer, a record producer, and a true beatnik. He's written 7 books, including To Live is to Fly, the ballad of the late, great Townes Van Zandt, which won the 2008 ASCAP Deems Taylor Award for Best Musical Biography. And he's also written for the New York Times, Rolling Stone, the New York Observer, Spin Magazine, Frets and Relics, among others. As a performing musician, he has performed with Allen Ginsberg, Laurie Anderson, Sam Shepard, the Violent Femmes, Rick Danko and Garth Hudson from the band, and a fellow we're going to be talking about today, a fellow by the name of John Prine, who we wish well. Anyway, all the way from his home in Los Angeles, Mr. John Kruth. Johnny, how are you doing today?
Well, I can't complain, man. I can't complain. We're doing okay, and I mean it's a crazy, sad time, but we're just trying to stay creative here and putting out a good, positive message for everybody.
That's right. Well, John, you spent some time in Minneapolis back in the 70s.
I sure did.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, it was the last draft of the Vietnam War that I was hoping to dodge, and I had grown up in New Jersey, right outside of New York City, and I was looking for a place to go to college, and I met a really cool guy there named Quirk Markeski, who had a band once called the 50-Foot Hose from San Francisco, and he was a neon kinetic sculptor, and I really liked him, and Minneapolis was only a couple hours from the Canadian border in case I had to flee, because my number was only number 52.
4 hours to be exact, but yeah.
So I was a little freaked out at that point, and so a young kid in art school, and living on the south side there over by the art school, and it was a really great time, and I met all kinds of wonderful, interesting people, including Robert Pirsig, who wrote The Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. He was in the neighborhood, and it was just it was a great time, and so much amazing music happening in Minneapolis at that time.
And of course, you met my really good buddy Aldo Maroney as well.
Well, Aldo Maroney, he was working at the Black Forest Inn then as a chef, and he was sneaking us some potato salad and bread and stuff out the back door when we were so broke that summer that Nixon resigned.
Best potato salad in town.
Oh, man. My very first book was called something like, oh, God, I can't even remember now. It was a book of poetry, very influenced by Richard Brautigan and Larry Ferlinghetti. It was called something about slow cigarettes and forgotten truths. That's what it's called. And it had a photograph of the piano at the Black Forest Inn on the cover.
My good friend James Reggae has had a long time love of his life named Erica Kristen. Her family owns that place.
Wow.
So, and occasionally Jimmy bartends. Jimmy's a great abstract expressionist, and so that's that. I know that corner well. I used to live on Ridgewood Avenue, right behind.
Rudolph's Barbecue. I lived on Ridgewood Avenue too.
Oh, you're kidding me? What was your address?
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Mine was 441, apartment 34. Obviously, Kruth, have a lot better memory than you do.
Well,
so tell us about a little bit about the music you were grooving on and playing when you were here in Minneapolis in the 70s.
Well, I met a really, I don't even know what to call him. He was sewing glass to wood. He was a fetishist. There was a group called the Midwest Fetish Association that made these really crazy fetishes, and Aldo would remember them, Kathleen Volpe and Sonny Bach, and this guy named Glenn Wolfe, and he played really good Leo Kaki style guitar, bottleneck, and a really good guitar player. And I was deep into the mandolin and harmonica. I've always been something of a multi-instrumentalist, and we started playing as a duo and playing around, a Kaufman Union, got at the Extempore a couple times, New Riverside Cafe, and then we went to see Elvis Costello on his first tour of the States when he played in Minneapolis.
Where was that gig?
Oh, come on, man. Somebody yesterday got mad at me that I couldn't remember who the drummer was on this one tune that we cut. And I said, I got hit by a car on Houston about like 5 years ago. I'm using that as my excuse.
Okay, great. Well,
and I have, my memory hasn't been so great since
okay,
then.
We'll buy it. We're in a pandemic.
I can't remember, honestly. There's just too much stuff jammed in this little brain of mine.
Well, we're going to be playing some of your music off your last solo record that you recorded in Italy. But just kind of give you...
I just wanted to say about what happened. What totally changed us overnight was that we saw Elvis Costello, and we walked out of there completely like, we had been zapped.
Right.
And looked at each other and went, okay, well, I guess it's time to put down the acoustics. And we picked up the electrics.
Right.
And we started a band called the Whirlin' Dervishes that played at the Artist Quarter and wherever we could play at art openings. We were definitely, we played at the art school quite a bit. And we started this band called the Whirlin' Dervishes and played around town for a while with that. And everybody wanted to move to New York because we thought we were hot. They thought we were hot. Right. And wanted to move to New York and play at CB's and Max's and all this stuff. And I was seeing that I grew up there and I had, been out there. I was like, dudes, we're going to get they're going to mop the floor with us out there. No. And it's like, so, one by one, everybody started moving out to New York. And so eventually I moved back out to New York after I went to Berlin with Mark Heskey in 1978. I went to New York and that's when I just stayed in New York for.
That must have been an incredible time to be in New York City, the Lower East Side, CBGBs. There was such energy going on there.
It always was, though. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Jersey, half hour outside the city. My temple was the Fillmore.
Right.
And so by the time I was 15 years old, I was going to see Tim Buckley, Lightnin' Hopkins, Big Brother, Grateful Dead, whoever was playing at the Fillmore that I could afford to go. I saw Santana's first show at the Fillmore, whatever I could afford to go to, because my parents were getting divorced at the time and I was the youngest. So nobody was really paying much attention to what I was doing.
Right.
So I was going into the city, saving up I think it was $3 for 2 bands and $5 for 3 bands, and people would be standing out on the corner going, Bill, you're a capitalist pig, man. The music should be for free.
Right.
And he would say, yeah, you're going to miss me one day.
Right. I saw a Grateful Dead show in the summer I graduated in 1974. Third week of June down in, I believe it was Des Moines, Iowa, at the State Fairgrounds. And Bill was walking around with his little top hat and, the king of rock and roll that he was. And on one of the breaks, some farm boy flipped him the bird.
Oh, God.
And he was a big farm boy, but I remember Bill just threw his hat down and just jumped right at it and just went. We couldn't see by that time because all you could see was dust, but my money would have been on Bill Graham to kick the
of course.
Farm Boys.
Bill was a Russian immigrant who took no, flack.
Yeah, and escaped the Holocaust.
Yeah. He's an amazing guy.
So
we owe a lot to Bill.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting him in New York City. I cold called him at his office on 64th Street. I just knocked on the door. And it was cool. Remember those little label makers in the 70s and the late 60s?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So it said Winterland Productions. I knocked on the door, and he answered. He was vacuuming the office.
Oh, God.
And he so dug the fact that, I had the cojones to just cold call him and bring him I gave him my single of 59 Coal Mines. And I found out through a friend of his that worked for him was from Minneapolis that he dug the song, but he really just dug the fact that I cold called him,
Right. Bill would dig that. He would,
So tell us a little bit about the first tune we're going to hear.
Which tune are you playing first?
Let's see. We are going to play...
Forever Ago.
The album was recorded 2 years ago.
Yeah, really, forever ago.
In February. Okay. You're going to start with this song Forever Ago?
Yeah.
Okay, so Forever Ago is like a kind of a Dylan-esque, Leonard Cohen-esque waltz that I wrote on the mandolin after I had been really sick in Croatia. I got really sick when I was in Croatia and in hospital, which was a bizarre experience because I barely speak any Croatian, and my sweetheart was in L.A., who is Croatian-American. And she was in L.A. and she couldn't come to Croatia because her father was ill at the time. So both of the men in her life were down for the count, and so by the time I got out of the hospital and I was convalescing in bed over there, we have a small apartment in Split, which is such a beautiful town. I had a mandolin with me, and I guess I was in a rather nostalgic mood looking back at my life and yearning for my sweetheart. So that's where this song came.
All right. We're going to listen to a little bit.
Recorded in Italy with an Italian band with a wonderful mandolin player named Claudio Scarabattini and Jalou on the accordion. This is a beautiful Italian band, and Massimo Liberatore at the very end, you'll hear his voice.
Beautiful. We've got John Kruth, artist, musician, cool cat, complete beatnik, and a weirdo, wild man. I love him deeply. I got a chance to meet him.
Complete beatnik. Complete. Batteries included, Daddy.
Exactly. And we'll have Johnny on for the whole show tonight. Just a little bit of his music.
The girl with the red hair in the red dress is dancing. She's dancing in a trance on a hot July night, while the drummer is pounding out the poison that burns through his veins. He caught from a spider bite. Under the full moon they played for some spare change in a little town square where I met you. Outside the museum, the tourists have gathered. They wait patiently for the time to come, for the guards to throw open the vaults of a Wall of Power Radio Hour.
Welcome back to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metza. We hope you're enjoying a brand new show here. We've had to run a couple of reruns as we're getting this whole new routine together as we get through this pandemic, which hopefully will end sooner than later. But my guest, who I had a chance to meet, I actually met him on Facebook via our mutual friend, Pat Thomas, a fellow by the name of John Kruth. We're generally about the same age, and we have a lot of the same kind of likes. So, John, tell us a little bit about this record, this Italian record. How are those musicians doing? Are you in touch with them?
Oh yeah, I chat with Claudio, 4 or 5 times a week. He is such an amazing musician. To me, he is like my Gil Evans. If I was Miles, he is my Gil. He is the coolest arranger, collaborator that I've had in that he's classically trained. He's a choir master. He's really something, and I've never been able to one of the tracks on the album has the Bissé choir on it. I would say that was about 40 singers, and he put a full choir behind me, which was really quite an experience to sing with. It was just an amazing experience because we sang it. We did the song. It's a song called Christmas Eve. And we did the song at a monastery. And I had to sing over a choir of at least 40 singers that were better singers than I was.
I know that feeling. What
a humbling experience, man. They were so sweet because they really liked the song and they were like, oh, here's this guest artist from New York and da-da-da-da.
Right.
But man, I was the low man on the totem pole with in that one. But you when you gotta reach, you gotta reach,
yeah, absolutely.
And it's a great experience for you to do that. So, they're all doing okay so far. They're in Umbria, which is like very central, north of, Rome, about 75 to 100 miles. This whole experience was very much in a weird way my Bob Dylan and the band experience, because these guys had been playing together for years, 15, 20, 25 years. Some of these guys have been playing together.
Right.
And we had Jalou's house, the accordion player. His mother would start cooking in the morning for us.
Wow.
We would rehearse. We would go upstairs and have an incredible lunch and then chill out for like an hour after to digest for a while.
Right.
They'd go down into the recording studio and cut the music. And it was really, Claudio's the only one that speaks English. The rest of the guys, hey, when you're Italian, why would you want to speak English?
Right.
And they live up in the Umbria, I believe means wooded. It's up in the woods. It's like it was the parallel of my Bob Dylan and the band experience.
Wow.
Here were these guys that had a whole sound and scene together. They usually back up Massimo Liberatore, who was the singer at the very end who did the incantation at the end of Forever Ago. Beautiful voice, great songwriter, loves Woody Guthrie. And they usually back him up. And I had opened for him at a show, and they really dug me, and I really dug them, and that was it. We just started playing together, and I played on Massimo's album, and then in a short time they just said, hey, why don't we make your album? So after I finally got better, when I was ill in Croatia, I had written a bunch of songs. It just came to me like in a major fever, staying in bed for a month and a half. And, I had, cranked out most of the songs on that album. And then, and when I was well enough, I went back and stayed in a monastery and recorded this every day. Jalou's mom would make incredible food for us, and we would rehearse, and then we would go down to the studio and just cut the songs. And it was just like, wow, it was a dream.
It sounds like a cliche when you say music's the universal language, but as you know, it truly is. I played in Siberia, Novosibirsk, Siberia. A friend of mine owned a club over there and flew me over to play for 7 nights, and I played 2 nights with this jazz band, and then the other 5 nights they had their in-house blues band. And these guys, if you listen to them sing and play, you go, man, these are a bunch of really cool young white guys from Chicago. So I got off the plane. He said, you want to go rest? You want to go to the club? I said, we are going to the club. So I listened to his set. I plugged in, and we just playing Muddy Waters and John Lee Hooker and
Wow.
Albert
Wow.
King.
The universal language, that stuff.
Yeah, and so they're singing, right? So we go on a break, and I said, man, you guys are amazing. I said, where did you learn all this stuff? None of them spoke English. They all sang phonetically
I've been there.
and perfect English, but none of them spoke it. It blew my mind.
Right.
It blew my mind.
Okay, so really quick, I was in Morocco in the late 90s, and these two guys come walking up to me, Mutt and Jeff, this little short guy, all like in a polyester jacket and tie, and then this tall guy in like a fez and a jalaba, and the short guy is doing all the talking. He wants to talk to me very much about F. Scott Fitzgerald, William Faulkner, please, and Ernest Hemingway. And I'm like, yeah, I read all that stuff in high school. Sure, we could talk about it, American literature of the 20th century. And so we start talking about that. And the tall guy reaches into his jalaba and he pulls out this little piece of paper on which is written in perfect handwriting, John Lee Hooker, Lightnin' Hopkins, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf. And I go, yeah. And I reach in my pocket, I pull out a harmonica and I start blowing on the harmonica. And the guy looks at me like he was stung in the face by a bee. And he turns around and he runs away. And the short guy, I turned to him and I go, wow, I hope I didn't insult your friend. He goes, yes, Mr. Faulkner, he has very long sentences that seem to run on and on and on. And so he wants to keep talking to me about that stuff, right? In the meantime, Jeff, the tall guy, comes running back. He's got a kid with him. And this kid is carrying under his arm a soccer ball. And they come running up to me, and the kid runs right up to me, and he looks me right in the face, and he sticks the soccer ball in between his legs, and then he starts to like play like he's playing a conga drum on the soccer ball. And I take out the harmonica and I start jamming with him. And that, my friend, is the international language of the blues to begin with.
Absolutely. We've got John Kruth on the show for, all night tonight. We're going to listen to a song. It's called Mr. Crow, and we'll be back after these messages.
Big black crow, way up in a tree. Hey, Mr. Crow, Crow, tell me what you see. Could it be my baby flying home to me? Could it be my baby flying home to me? Hey, hey, big black crow, a big black crow. Big black crow, sitting on a pole. Hey, Mr. Crow, singing with a lot of soul. Where will you be now when the chilly wind blows? Hey, hey, big black crow, big black crow, big black crow, big black crow. Let me see, I got my sunglasses. They're right here on my face. Got my wallet, got my keys. Okay, andiamo. I was driving all night across an alligator alley when a long yellow line began to hypnotize me. It zigged, it zagged, it coiled like a cobra. I was headed
Welcome
for
back to the
Miami.
Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metzel. We just heard a tune called Drivin' by my guest, John Kruth. John, you and I were talking the other night, and you had heard we're talking about my song Jack Ruby, because, of course, Dylan just came out with that 17-minute opus called Murder Most Foul, kind of based around the day that JFK was assassinated, and, real panoramic look at American culture through the Rand McNally of Bob Dylan's musical and cultural mind.
God.
But anyway, you told me a phenomenal story that has something to do with Jack Ruby and a guy you met in India.
Yeah.
Tell us that story. It blew my mind.
All right. A friend of mine, his name is Radhanath Swami. He's the Maharaj of Chaupati is his real title, and he's a spiritual teacher in the Hare Krishna lineage, and a really beautiful, sweet, brilliant cat from Chicago who grew up in Chicago loving Paul Butterfield and the Rolling Stones, and played a bit of harmonica himself. And when I got to know him over in Mumbai, he hadn't played harmonica in a long time, though he plays really great harmonium and he leads kirtans and he's a really good singer and all of that. And so we started talking about the old days, and he's a few years older than I am, and we wound up, of course, talking about that day in infamy,
right,
when Kennedy was shot, and where were you, and all of that. And of course we talked about seeing the Beatles on television and everything. And he said, well, I had an amazing thing happen to me actually when right after the assassination of Jack Kennedy, and we were in the living room all watching the TV, me and my brothers. And
in Chicago.
In Chicago, yeah. And he said we were just, sitting there in front of the television set when they were marching Lee Harvey Oswald out. And Jack Ruby popped out of the corner of the television set and shot him. And just as Jack Ruby appears, his mother says, isn't that Jack? Isn't that Jack Ruby? And the father says, oh, yeah, he's always getting into all kinds of trouble. And the mother's saying, oh, poor Marge, I can't believe it. This is just terrible. And Richie, which was his name then, Radhanath's name at that point was Richie. And Richie is watching his parents who know Jack and Marge Ruby as the assassination of Lee Harvey Oswald is happening in real time.
Wow. And their name, of course, was Jack Rubenstein, was his God-given name. But that is right. That is an amazing story. Really, when you think about that, I remember watching it with my mother on an old Sylvania yellow wood panel TV.
Wow.
It was really the first reality television show.
It sure was. Yeah, I spit my high C right out, I was sitting there with peanut butter and jelly and a high C, I mean, I just pooh, we had a black and white RCA, it was like the size of a refrigerator or something.
I dropped my RC Cola.
Yeah. And moon pie. Yeah, I mean, wow.
John Kruth.
But, that really had an impact on our generation,
everybody.
I believe, psychologically in a huge way.
I'm not sure if America ever really recovered from it.
No, I don't think so. I think that was really one of the deepest cuts, for certainly of our generation, of those baby boomers. You know,
John Kruth, you've performed with just some amazing American musicians and poets and artists: Allen Ginsberg, Laurie Anderson, Arden Wine, Sam Shepard, Violent Femmes, Rick Danko, Garth Hudson, The Blues Project. A lot
of those are because of Hal Wilner. I met Hal Wilner when I was interviewing Hal, the incredible producer, of course, and I interviewed him on a book about Rahsaan Roland Kirk, my first book. And when I met Hal, he came over to this Moroccan shop where I also met my wife of 24 years, and on Prince Street. And I told these guys, I said, now look, this guy who's coming over, he said, where do you want to do the interview? And I said, my office is the basement of a Moroccan import shop over on Prince Street. So he said, great, I'll come over and we'll do the interview about Rahsaan there. And I said to these guys, I said, now listen, this guy's a really great producer, Marianne Faithfull, Tom Waits, Lou Reed, all kinds of incredible people he's worked with. And when he comes, we should throw down, make a tagine and have some food and throw down some great music for him when he walks in the door. And they're like, cool. So when Hal came walking in, I mean, the band was already playing. It was like he was on his own, TV show in Morocco or something, and we did the interview there. And about 3 nights later, he calls me up and he says, Kruth, I'm doing this thing with Alan over at St. Mark's Church, next week, and I was wondering if you could bring your Moroccan band over there. And I go, Alan? He goes, Ginsberg. I'm like, oh, cool. And so we went over, and the guys put down rugs and lanterns and the whole thing, and we backed up Alan while he recited his poetry that he wrote in Tangier.
Wow.
And from that point on, I had a really good relationship with Hal Wilner, who was his musical director for about 4 or 5 shows. And that's how I met Laurie and worked with Laurie Anderson when we did the Jack Kerouac Haiku show. And so a lot of the people that I wound up working with was because of Hal Wilner.
I've got to ask you, and we've got about 5 minutes left, John Kruth. First of all, before I forget, how can people track you down, listen to your music, buy a book, or whatever?
Contact me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook a lot.
Okay.
There's a ton of stuff on YouTube, but right now, johnkruth.com, I forgot to pay my little, my rent, and
I tell you, complete beatnik, batteries included.
It became a German dating service. Which is better than what happened to Violent Femmes when they forgot to pay theirs. It became a porn site.
Well, my harmonic player and I, Sonny Earl, have a site called paulandsonny.com. There's also a Paul and Sonny that are these 2 young, handsome, gay TV stars.
Oh.
So occasionally people confuse us. But anyway, I know that's just the netherworld that is the Internet. Now we've got 4 minutes left, John Kruth. I want to talk about one of America's greatest songwriters, who is, I guess he's in stable condition from COVID-19. But you've worked with him. Tell us a
Love that man.
Tell us a John Prine story.
Oh, God. A John Prine story. Okay, so I opened for John Prine at the Avalon Theater in Milwaukee. This must have been about 1992, I would say. And afterwards, we go over to the Hyatt. He's got a bunch of people, a throng following him over to the Hyatt. We walk in. He's buying or the Marriott, I think it was. He starts buying drinks for everybody. He's standing at the bar, and he's looking up at the television set, and David Letterman is on the TV, and Letterman has the Crusher on as his guest. And John kind of cocks his head and squints his eyes, looking at the television set like he's Peter Falk in Columbo. Right. And he's looking up at the TV set, and the Crusher says to David Letterman that Hulk Hogan is a pussy. And so, okay, about 1 minute later, Hulk Hogan and his entourage comes walking in the door. And Hulk comes right up to the bar, and John now looks really small next to Hulk Hogan. Yeah. And he turns to Hulk and he cocks his head and he squints his eye and he looks up to Hulk and he says, Mr. Hogan, can I call you Hulk? And he's like, yeah. And he said, well, just a minute ago, the Crusher was on David Letterman there, and he called you a pussy. And Hulk Hogan takes his fist and bam, hits the bar, and all the drinks like jump up in the air. And he looks at John like he's going to pick him up over his head and throw him across the room. And John goes, well, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was the Crusher. It was the Crusher. And then Hulk starts to smile. Big grin comes across his face. Everybody chills out. Whew, okay. It was just a joke, right? And about 1 minute after that, Joan Jett walks in the room. Wow. And because it's quitting time. It's like 1 a.m. or something like that. And everybody who was in Milwaukee that night is over at the Marriott. So it's like Joan Jett comes in with her group of people. And John turns to me and goes, John, who is that? I said, man, that's Joan Jett. He goes, well, you want to introduce me to her? I said, well, I don't think she's going to be that interested in you. And he goes, oh, come on, introduce me to her. Well, Joan walks up to the bar and John says, pardon me, ma'am, but have you heard about Jesus? And she looks at him like something slimy just crawled up her leg. And he says, I mean, Jesus, the missing years. And then he starts to recite his poem to her. And, when I went to Minneapolis College of Art and Design, I was a photo major. Of course, I didn't have a camera. Right. So that was a bright moment of being on the road and with John. I also had another one that was really hilarious. We were playing the Oshkosh Opera House, and I opened for him.
Do it in 30 seconds.
Okay, I opened for him. He calls me out for his encore of Paradise. And he says, sing one. And I don't know the words. And so I look at him and I play the mandolin solo. And afterwards he says to me, God damn, man, the entire opera house filled with people. Everybody knows the words of that song. And I picked the one person who didn't know the words.
And that's my guest, John Kruth. John, it's been an amazing night. You and Marilyn stay safe out there in Los Angeles, and we will definitely be in touch. And thanks for these great stories and your great vibe.
God bless you.
Welcome back to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metsa. I would like to debut a song I wrote and recorded last week. You can find it on YouTube. It's called You Can't Be Brave If You're Not Scared. So this is going to be the international debut of this song. I hope you enjoy it. Well, the day is dark, but the night is darker. The honeybee stays in its hive. Well, the whippoorwill never got out alive. Well, the river runs from golden mountains. A redwood sways from side to side. Blue bonnets grow on Texas prairies, on highways traveled for those who got out alive. Abandoned hope, you must be kidding. My coat of steel, which I wear, put this down upon my tombstone. You can't be brave if you're not scared. You can't be brave if you're not scared. Let's not forget vanishing footsteps and all those soldiers who fought side to side. We salute them all in midnight moments, especially those who got out alive. Draws near and the clock is ticking. I hope the answer comes from 9 to 5. I say a prayer to those still listening, and for those who got out alive, especially those who got out alive. Abandoned hope, well, you must be kidding. This coat of steel, which I wear, put this down on my rusted tombstone. You can't be brave if you're not scared. You can't be brave if you're not scared. You can't be brave if you're not scared. Thanks for listening to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. The show was produced by Paul Metza, engineered by Brett Johnson. We'd like to thank our guest, John Kruth. I want to give you all the best positivity going out there to all of you to stay strong during these times. Remember to wash your hands. Follow me at paulmetza.com. If you're a Facebook buddy, I'm going to be reading from my book, Blue Guitar Highway, starting in a couple nights. If you want to support the show, my Venmo account is Paul-Metza. And like my dad used to tell me, remember to be kind and make someone happy.